Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're traveling through the lives you could have lived across the ancient world, slipping quietly from the marble corridors of Rome to the golden dawns of Egypt, to the frozen longhouses of the Vikings, the blazing caravans of the Silk Road, the sacred jungles of the Maya, and the echoing stadiums of the ancient Olympics. Each life waiting for you tonight carries its own heartbeat, its fears, its beauty, its secrets, and the gentle wisdom that time forgot. These aren't just stories, they're windows into the worlds your soul might have walked 1,000 years ago. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe. But only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let your breath soften, and let the centuries open around you like a quiet, endless night. Tonight, as we drift quietly into the soft glow of ancient Rome, you find yourself standing inside a villa whose marble floors feel cool beneath your bare feet, the kind of coolness that wakes the senses but invites calm at the same time. You are 15 years old, still caught between childhood and the shape of the adult you are expected to become, and yet the house around you hums with the unmistakable rhythm of responsibility. The morning sun has only just begun to slip through the opening of the atrium above, painting slow-moving patterns of gold across the walls that your ancestors once touched. You hear footsteps, your father's, heavy, purposeful, carrying the authority of a man who believes that every hour of every day builds the destiny of a household. He calls your name, not sharply enough to wound, but firmly enough to remind you that this morning is not simply another morning. Today is a lesson, though lessons here rarely feel soft or gentle. They are forged the way iron meets the hammer, and you, standing in the doorway, are the iron being shaped. As you follow your father toward the entrance hall, a quiet flutter of nerves rises in your chest. You are preparing for the salutatio, the daily ritual when clients, allies, petitioners, and ambitious men of lesser status arrive to greet the head of your family. To outsiders, it seems like a simple exchange of greetings, but inside Rome, inside these marble walls, it is the true heartbeat of social power. The clients will come with hopes, with favors owed, with whispers of opportunity, and your father will stand in the place where Roman dignity must stand unshaken. And today, for the first time, you stand beside him. Your hands are steady, but your thoughts are not. You picture Marcus, your friend, only a year older, telling you yesterday how his own father once thrust him into this ritual without warning. The clients flowed like a river, he had said, half laughing, half remembering the terror of it, and I felt like a child trying to drink the entire Tiber. Now, as the first knock echoes through the entryway, you understand exactly what he meant. The doors open, and the stream begins. Men in togas step inside with careful grace, bowing to your father with the deference required by custom and ambition alike. Their eyes flicker toward you, measuring, weighing, wondering if you will someday be a man worth greeting as well. You feel heat rise under your skin, not embarrassment, not pride, but the awareness that Rome itself is looking at you through their eyes. Your father's voice remains calm, steady, perfectly controlled. He addresses each client with the precision of someone who has performed this ritual thousands of times. You watch the angle of his posture, the small pauses he uses to show respect without surrender, the way his hand gestures just enough to acknowledge a favor, but not enough to promise it. Every movement carries meaning, and you realize this is a language you have only just begun to learn. Then, unexpectedly, your father steps aside. "This is my son," he says. "He will greet you today." For a moment, the world becomes impossibly still, as if the mosaics on the floor are holding their breath. You step forward. You bow, not too deeply, not too casually, exactly as your tutor once instructed. And when you straighten, you meet their eyes, one pair, then another, then another. Men who have survived wars, debts, rivalries, and the shifting winds of Roman politics. You feel their expectations settle on your shoulders like a cloak that is slightly too heavy, but not unbearable. And strangely, your fear begins to soften. There is something grounding here, something almost peaceful in realizing that every man in this room once stood where you stand now. Every senator began as a boy learning how to bow. Every consul learned how to greet. Every emperor once trembled at the weight of being seen. As the ritual continues, your heartbeat finds a slower rhythm. You begin to notice details you missed before: the faint smell of olive oil lamps, the warmth of sunlight creeping further across the floor, the distant sound of a vendor's cart rolling down the street outside. The empire is awake, stretching, breathing, moving, and somehow you are moving with it. When the final client departs, your father looks at you for a long moment, not with praise, not with criticism, but with recognition. A small nod, a quiet approval, and in that silent gesture, you feel the first fragile spark of belonging, not as a child, not yet as a man, but as someone Rome is beginning to shape. When the salutation finally ends and the villa grows quiet again, your father dismisses you with a simple gesture, a reminder that power in Rome is not learned in a single morning. You walk through the corridor lined with fading frescoes, hunters in motion, goddesses caught in eternal dances, and the air grows still enough for you to hear your own breathing. Waiting at the far end is the figure who has shaped more of your mind than anyone else in your life, your pedagogus. He is a Greek freedman, older than your father, with a face carved by years of study and disappointment, a man who carries wisdom the way others carry scars. He greets you with that familiar mixture of sternness and reluctant affection, and with a small tilt of his head, he leads you toward the study room. The sunlight passing through the doorway feels warmer here, softer, as if the villa itself understands that this is not a place of politics or duty, but of shaping the soul beneath the toga. On the wooden table rests a stack of papyrus scrolls, a stylus, and a small jar of ink that always smells faintly of resin and dust. The room is simple, but it is here that you will face battles far more difficult than greeting clients. Today's lesson begins with rhetoric, the art that Rome values more than gold, more than armies, because rhetoric is how a single man bends the will of thousands. Your pedagogus unrolls a scroll, and the sound of papyrus crackling fills the room like the soft whisper of something ancient waking up. He directs you to stand. His voice is calm, never rushed, as he asks you to recite a passage you practiced the night before. You begin with confidence, but midway through the second sentence, something catches, an uncertainty, a stumble, a misplacement of tone. It is slight, but you feel it. He feels it, and before you can correct yourself, he raises a hand. Again. You start over. This time, the words feel heavier, as though each sentence is balancing the weight of expectation. Yet the more you speak, the more your mind wanders to the afternoon you stood in the forum last week, gathering the courage to practice speaking to a small group of boys. You remember the moment your voice cracked, how they tried not to laugh, how embarrassment flooded your chest like hot water. The memory returns now, sharp enough to sting, but your pedagogus watches you closely, measuring not your pronunciation, but your resolve. He knows you are remembering. He knows you are trying not to buckle under it. When you finish the passage, he says nothing at first. Silence in this room is not punishment. It is a space for truth to surface. Finally, he gestures for you to sit, and as he dips the stylus into ink, he begins to explain the nature of failure, not with cruelty, but with a quiet clarity that settles like dust upon stone. A Roman's voice, he says, is forged the same way a sword is heated and cooled, over and over, until it holds its edge. His words are slow, deliberate. You fear the eyes of others because you have not yet learned to hear your own. Then he hands you a fresh sheet of papyrus. Write, he says, not the passage. Write what you wished you had said yesterday when your voice cracked. Write the speech you were afraid to give. At first, your hand trembles slightly as you hold the stylus, but then something loosens within you, not confidence, not courage, but a soft permission to be honest in a way the forum never allowed. The ink glides across the papyrus, each line a small rebellion against the fear you've carried. Outside, you hear the distant shouts of street vendors, the clatter of cartwheels on stone, the breathing of a city that has always demanded greatness. But here in this quiet room, greatness feels like something that grows slowly, patiently, like a candle flame protected from the wind by cupped hands. When you finish writing, your pedagogus reads your words with eyes that rarely reveal emotion. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then he nods once, slowly, as though approving not your skill, but the courage it took to put it on the page. This, he murmurs, is where a Roman begins. And as you sit with the fading scent of ink and the steady silence between you, you feel, for the first time today, the possibility of becoming someone you yourself might someday respect. When the lesson finally draws to a quiet close, and your mind feels both exhausted and strangely lighter, your pedagogus releases you for the afternoon. You step outside into the open air, and the warmth of the Roman sun greets you as though it has been waiting just beyond the villa walls. The city is no longer the muted background it was during your studies. Now it feels alive, humming with purpose, sending voices and footsteps and the scent of fresh bread drifting through the narrow streets. Today is the first day your father allows you to walk to the forum without a servant at your side, a rare privilege for someone your age. It is meant as a test of your composure, your observation, and perhaps even your sense of who you are becoming. Your sandals brush against the uneven stones as you follow the familiar path toward the heart of the city. Children run past you, chasing each other with the freedom you are only beginning to forget. Street vendors shout the prices of olives, figs, and salted fish. A potter's hammer taps rhythmically in the distance. And as you breathe in the air heavy with dust and spice, you feel the strange mix of anticipation and uncertainty that always comes with standing on the edge of change. When the Forum Romanum finally opens before you, it feels less like a place and more like an awakening. The white columns rise like guardians of memory, and the vast space is filled with men in togas, debating, bargaining, whispering, proclaiming. Every corner seems to pulse with ambition. You move through the crowd carefully, absorbing the scene with the growing awareness that one day, this world will not merely be something you observe, it will be something you shape. Near the steps of the Basilica Julia, you spot your friends, Lucius, energetic and loud in everything he does, Fladian, who always watches before speaking, and Marcus, whose confidence has grown ever since he survived his first salutatio. They greet you with the effortless camaraderie of boys whose lives are changing faster than they can understand. You sit with them on the warm stone steps, and before long, the conversation drifts to the subject that hovers over all of you like an invisible shadow, the future.
Lucius insists he will join the military, his eyes shining with dreams of glory, of riding into battle with the legionary eagles glinting in sunlight. Flavian speaks quietly, admitting he hopes to avoid war entirely, that he prefers the quiet logic of numbers and the promise of becoming a magistrate. Marcus, who rarely shows doubt, confesses he is torn between the path his father wants, politics, and the path he secretly longs for, philosophy. When they ask you what you will choose, you have no answer. Not because you haven't thought about it, but because the choice feels too large, too heavy, like trying to capture the entire city in your hands. You glance around the forum, at the senators deep in debate, at the merchants shouting prices, at the priests leading small processions toward the temples, and you realize that every path in Rome demands something different. Strength, strategy, vision, sacrifice. No one can choose lightly. As the discussion fades, your group watches a young orator practicing a speech near the rostra. His gestures are wide, full of passion, but his voice wavers just slightly, just enough to reveal his fear. You recognize it instantly. It is the same trembling you felt in your chest at the forum last week, the same uncertainty your pedagogus had sensed today. For a moment, you see yourself in that young man, and instead of shame, you feel a small flicker of kinship, a reminder that every Roman who ever stood on that platform once struggled to breathe through their own trembling. The sun drifts lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the marble. The noise of the forum softens, and a gentle breeze carries the faint scent of incense from a nearby temple. In this quieter hour, the city feels less like an empire demanding greatness and more like a living story waiting for your chapter to begin. As you rise to leave, your friends walk with you toward the edge of the square, their laughter easing the weight on your shoulders. And though the path home is long, you feel something new settling inside you. Not a decision, not yet, but the sense that the future is not a burden to fear, but a landscape you will learn to navigate one step at a time.
By the time you return home from the forum, the sky has softened into the deep blue of early evening, and the villa feels calmer than it had in the morning. Servants move quietly through the halls, preparing lamps and lighting small terracotta bowls filled with fragrant oil. The light flickers gently against the marble, creating long shadows that sway like silent dancers across the walls. You walk to your room, each step slow, as though the weight of the day is pulling gently at your shoulders. It is not a painful heaviness, but the kind that arrives when the world becomes a little larger than it was when the sun first rose. Your room is small compared to the grand spaces of the villa, but it feels like a sanctuary, your own corner of Rome where the noise of ambition cannot reach you so sharply. A single window opens toward the quiet courtyard, where a thin stream of water trickles from a fountain shaped like a lion's head. You sit on the edge of your bed, listening to that water, letting its steady rhythm settle into your breathing. The events of the day return to you slowly, the unwavering gaze of the clients during the salutatio, the patient firmness of your pedagogus, the laughter of your friends, the trembling voice of the young orator. It all blends into a single stream of thoughts that swirls gently through your mind. You lie down, staring at the ceiling where the lamplight flickers like a soft constellation. The world beyond your room continues moving, distant chatter from the kitchen, footsteps fading in the corridor, the muted sounds of the cities settling under the cloak of night. But inside your room, everything feels suspended, as if time itself is pausing to give you space to feel whatever rises from within. Doubt arrives first, soft and familiar. You wonder if you greeted the clients properly, if your bow was too quick or too hesitant. You wonder if your pedagogus noticed the moment your voice almost broke again. You wonder if your friends truly know what they want, or if their confidence is simply louder than yours.
Rome has a way of placing invisible weights upon your chest, not to crush you, but to remind you of what you may someday carry. And yet, beneath that doubt, something else begins to glow, a fragile warmth that you have felt only in rare moments. It emerges when you remember the way your father looked at you after the salutatio, the small nod that spoke more than any praise. It grows when you think of the passage you wrote for your pedagogus, the honesty that flowed from your hand without fear. It brightens when you recall the orator whose voice trembled just like yours, reminding you that uncertainty is a bridge, not a wall. You close your eyes, and for a moment you imagine the future not as a path you must choose immediately, but as a horizon that will reveal itself gradually with each step you take. You picture yourself walking across that horizon, sometimes confidently, sometimes hesitantly, but always moving. The night deepens. The last sounds of the villa fade until only the fountain's steady trickle remains. Your thoughts soften, stretching into dreams. In those dreams, you are older, not yet a man, but no longer a boy, standing once again in the forum. The columns rise around you like guardians, the air thick with possibility. You are not speaking, not yet, but you are breathing calmly, waiting for the moment when you will walk toward the rostra with steady steps. And as you stand there, Rome feels less like an empire and more like a companion, demanding, yes, but also patient, as if it knows that becoming someone of worth takes time. When you drift toward sleep, the last thing you hear is a gentle whisper carried through the open window, a whisper that might be the wind or the city, or perhaps the lingering echo of the great names who once walked these streets. Augustus, Caesar, Cicero. They seem to call, not to intimidate, but to welcome you into the long lineage of those who once doubted, once dreamed, and still found their place in the marble corridors of history.
As the last echoes of Rome fade into the darkness behind you, the world shifts, slowly at first, like a dream adjusting its shape, then fully, unmistakably, as new light breaks across the horizon. The marble corridors dissolve, the Latin voices soften, and a warmth radiates through the air unlike anything you have ever felt. It is heavier, older, perfumed with resin and blue lotus, carrying the scent of a land that remembers the beginning of civilization itself. We leave Rome's marble and travel much further back, beyond empires, beyond philosophies, to a kingdom carved by a river older than memory. The Nile glows gold beneath the rising sun, and in that shimmering light, you awaken not as the boy who struggled through the expectations of a Roman morning, but as the divine ruler of the two lands, the living Horus, the Pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt. Your eyes open to a chamber bathed in soft sunlight filtered through embroidered linen curtains. The walls surrounding you are carved with scenes of your ancestors, kings with faces both stern and serene, queens wearing crowns shaped like the moon, falcons, cobras, and jackals watching over you with the same solemn reassurance they have offered to every king before you. Servants enter your chamber in perfect silence, moving like shadows softened by incense. They lower their heads, never meeting your gaze for more than a heartbeat. Your face is the face of a god to them. Two attendants step forward with a basin carved from alabaster, filled with water brought from the lands of Punt, perfumed with myrrh and crushed lotus petals. As they pour it slowly over your hands and arms, the water feels cool, fragrant, and impossibly pure, as though it carries the breath of distant forests and old gods. A priest murmurs a blessing under his breath, thanking the river for sustaining your kingdom,
thanking the sun for returning to guide your reign. Then they begin to clothe you. Layer after layer of fine white linen is wrapped around your body, woven so delicately that each fold glimmers like morning light caught inside fabric. The linen touches your skin with a softness that borders on sacred. This is not clothing, but ritual, a physical reminder that the world expects you to be more than human. When the dressing is complete, an attendant approaches carrying a wooden box inlaid with lapis lazuli and electrum. He opens it to reveal the skent, the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, the red and the white joined into one symbol of absolute rule. They lift it slowly, reverently, for even the act of holding it is a burden. When they place it upon your head, the weight is undeniable. It presses gently onto your temples, heavy enough to steady your breath, heavy enough to remind you that while you are still young, the responsibilities placed upon you are older than the pyramids outside your window. The physical weight becomes a spiritual one, the weight of the Nile, the weight of the harvest, the weight of a kingdom that believes your heartbeat keeps chaos at bay. Yet beneath that weight is a deep stillness, a quiet truth that wraps around you like the linen on your skin. You are not alone. Every pharaoh before you has felt this same crown settle upon their brow. Every one of them learned to carry it. You inhale the warm air scented with frankincense and sunrise, and as the attendants step back, the room grows still. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, you hear the first morning calls of ibis birds, the distant splash of water as fishermen push their boats from the banks, and the soft hum of a civilization awakening beneath your rule. For a moment, you close your eyes, feeling the sun on your face, the crown on your brow, and the ancient river breathing its mist through the dawn. And in that quiet, you understand why kings were once thought to be gods made flesh.
When the final layer of linen settles across your shoulders and the pashent presses its solemn weight into your crown, the doors of your chamber open once more, and the palace ushers you toward the heart of your daily duty. The morning light has grown brighter now, pouring through long corridors lined with columns painted in deep reds and earthy ochres, each one carved with stories of gods who watch you from their eternal stillness. Your footsteps echo softly against polished stone as priests and officials fall into formation around you, their movements organized with ritual precision. You do not speak, and they do not expect you to. The silence around a pharaoh is not emptiness, but reverence, a shared understanding that words must earn their place when spoken in the presence of a living god. As you enter the throne hall, the air grows cooler, shaded by towering stone pillars wrapped in lotus patterns and protective hieroglyphs that whisper blessings with every flicker of light. The throne at the far end glows beneath a beam of sunlight angled through a high window, illuminating the gold leaf that covers its surface. When you ascend the steps and take your seat, the room seems to shift, as though Egypt itself adjusts its breath to match yours. You feel the throne beneath you, solid, ancient, carved from cedar brought across deserts and oceans, and for a moment its weight counters the weight of the crown, grounding you in the long chain of kings who have sat exactly where you sit now. Court begins with the gentle rustle of scrolls being unrolled. Viziers, generals, scribes, and high priests step forward one by one, offering reports in voices calm but edged with urgency. They speak of the Nile's rising waters, of tax shipments delayed by sandstorms, of disputes between farmers and temple estates, of artisans requesting copper allotments, of omens observed in the night sky. As each man speaks, you study not only his words, but the way he breathes, the way his gaze shifts, the way his hands tighten around the scrolls he carries. For you are not merely listening, you are weighing,
measuring, discerning the invisible threads that bind Egypt together and the subtle tensions that could unravel it if handled without care. One advisor, older than the rest, steps forward with an unease he tries to hide beneath practiced formality. He speaks of the coming inundation, the annual flood that determines the year's prosperity, and how early signs suggest lower waters. You feel the tension ripple through the hall like a faint tremor beneath the floor. A weak flood means weak harvest, and a weak harvest means hunger, the kind that cracks the loyalty of villages and stirs whispers between temples. For a moment, you sense your youth again, the same fragile uncertainty that shadowed your mornings in Rome, but here it arrives differently. In this hall, doubt is dangerous not because it weakens you, but because it can shape the fate of thousands. The advisor continues, speaking now of Tutankhamun, the boy king whose counselors once steered the kingdom while he struggled to balance reverence and authority. You can almost feel the weight he carried, not unlike your own. Yet something inside you steadies, not confidence, but clarity. You ask a question, your voice soft yet resonant in the cavernous hall. Heads lift, the tension eases. For the first time since dawn, you feel your power not as burden, but as direction. More reports follow, each one painting another thread of the vast tapestry that is Egypt. Taxes, granaries, border patrols, trade caravans, temple rituals, astronomical readings, all flowing toward you like tributaries into the Nile. And with each decision you make, guided by instinct and lineage alike, the room shifts, recognizing the emergence of a ruler who is no longer merely crowned, but awake. When the final advisor steps back, the hall grows silent again. It is not the silence of fear, nor the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of a kingdom acknowledging its Pharaoh, a silence deep as stone, steady as the river, and warm as the breath of Ra rising into the sky. You rise from the throne, and as you walk toward the temple gates beyond, you feel Egypt walking with you. When you leave the throne hall, the world outside has shifted into the full clarity of midday, and the palace opens before you like a living monument carved from sunlight and ancient breath. The air is warmer now, carrying the scent of heated stone and distant myrrh, and the corridors echo softly with the footsteps of priests preparing the sacred path. They bow as you pass, lowering their eyes in reverence, for the journey you are about to take is not a performance, but a communion, a crossing between mortal duty and divine inheritance. As you approach the temple complex, the architecture rises like mountains built by human hands and guided by the will of gods. Colossal statues flank the entrance, falcons with obsidian eyes, lions frozen mid-roar, pharaohs of ages past gazing forward with a serenity born of eternity. Their shadows stretch across the ground, long and cool, inviting you into the realm where the boundary between life and the afterlife thins like silk pulled taut. You step through the massive stone gate and the world changes. The sun dims behind thick pylons carved with scenes of triumph and cosmic order. The air grows cooler, and the sound of the bustling city melts away into a cavernous quiet that vibrates with something older than language. Torches burn along the walls, their flames bending and straightening as if responding to your presence. Priests in white linen surround you, their chants low and rhythmic, a pulse that seems to sync with your heartbeat. They lead you through the hypostyle hall, where towering columns rise like a sacred forest, each one carved with hieroglyphs that shimmer faintly under torchlight. Some symbols speak of creation, the first sunrise, the breath of Ra. Others tell of your lineage, reminding you that your bloodline is stitched into the fabric of the cosmos itself. As you walk deeper into the temple, the hallway narrows, the ceiling lowers, light grows scarce, and shadows sharpen. The air becomes cool and dense, scented with resin as though the stones themselves exhale memories of centuries long gone. You can hear the echo of your own steps, each one swallowed by the vast stillness that surrounds you. The priests begin a new chant, deeper now, resonating low in their chests. The sound becomes a vibration, a hum that wraps around you like invisible silk. It is the same sound that has greeted every pharaoh for thousands of years, a song of continuity and expectation, woven from devotion and myth. At last, you reach the innermost chamber, the sanctum where Ra's presence is believed to dwell. The room is small, dark, circular, illuminated only by a single shaft of sunlight filtered through an opening far above your head. Dust motes drift lazily in the beam, turning the golden light into something that feels alive. In the center of the chamber stands the shrine, a polished pedestal holding the sacred statue of Ra, carved from gold that glows even in near darkness. The falcon-headed god stares forward, eternal and unblinking. You do not bow quickly. You do not move with haste. You approach the shrine the way one approaches a mirror that reflects not the face, but the soul. A priest hands you a bowl filled with offerings, grains, oil, lotus petals, and you place them gently at the foot of the shrine, feeling the cool stone beneath your fingertips. Another priest lights a small dish of incense, and as smoke curls upward, it sways through the beam of sunlight like a living thread weaving heaven and earth. You close your eyes. The scents, frankincense, lotus, cedar, blend together until they no longer feel like smells, but memories, inherited not from your mind, but from the countless pharaohs before you who have stood here in this precise stillness. In the darkness behind your eyelids, you feel the immense weight of your role let go of its sharp edges and soften into something calmer, something that resembles acceptance. The chants rise around you like a tide, steady, ancient, patient. And for a moment, standing in the heart of the temple, illuminated by a single sunbeam as incense drifts like ghostly silk, you feel not like a ruler, not like a god, but like a quiet child of the universe, one who has paused long enough to finally hear the heartbeat of creation itself.
When you finally step out from the shadows of the inner sanctuary, the afternoon sun has already begun its long descent, casting warm amber light across the courtyards of the palace. The air outside feels different, cooler, gentler, carrying the faint scent of lotus drifting from the river. Servants fall into place behind you as you walk, but their steps remain a whisper, careful not to disturb the soft stillness that follows the presence of the gods. Beyond the palace gates waits your royal barge, its prow carved into the likeness of a falcon, wings unfurled as if ready to rise into the sky. The polished wood glows beneath the sunlight, and gold-painted patterns shimmer like ripples on the water. You board the vessel without a word, and the moment your feet touch the deck, the world seems to shift again, not suddenly, but gently, as though the river recognizes your presence and reshapes itself to carry you. The barge drifts into the wide, silver-blue expanse of the Nile. Its waters move with unhurried grace, reflecting the sky in broken fragments of gold and rose. Fishermen bow from their smaller boats as you pass. Children stand on the shore with hands raised in reverence. Priests on distant temple steps pause their evening chants to acknowledge the silhouette of their king gliding along the sacred river. You move to the edge of the deck, letting your hand rest lightly on the smooth railing. The wind brushes your face with warm fingers, carrying the voices of water birds settling in the reeds and the faint rush of the current curling around the hull. With each passing moment, the noise of the palace fades, replaced by the slow breathing of the river, steady and ancient. As the barge glides forward, the pyramids rise in the distance, their forms softened by the veiled glow of twilight.
They stand like colossal guardians of memory, their sides catching the final rays of the sun until they burn with a soft golden fire. You watch the sun sink slowly behind the largest pyramid, and for a moment the world becomes still, utterly still, as if time itself has paused to witness the meeting of day and night. The sky darkens to a deep violet. The first star appears, faint but resolute, shimmering like a single thought rising in a quiet mind. You exhale, and the breath carries away the lingering intensity of the day, the weight of the crown, the voices of advisors, the solemn chants of the temple. In its place comes something calmer, not relief, not triumph, but a sense of vastness, an awareness that your life stretches beyond the throne, beyond duty, beyond even the title of God King. You wonder briefly what immortality truly means. Is it written in monuments, in the stone faces of statues that endure for thousands of years? Or is it carried in the quiet choices you make each day, the unseen ripples of kindness, strength, and restraint? Perhaps immortality is neither carved nor crowned. Perhaps it is felt, an echo that moves forward long after footsteps fade. The river responds with a soft lap against the hull, as if offering its own answer. When the sun finally disappears, a deep hush falls over the water. Torches are lit along the sides of the barge, their flames trembling gently, casting warm halos across the deck. The Nile whispers along its banks, ancient and patient. You stand quietly, watching the stars multiply across the sky, until your eyelids grow heavy with the peace that only evening on the river can bring. As the barge turns back toward the palace, the world dims into a cradle of night. The pyramids fade into silhouettes, the sky opens wider. You breathe deeply, letting the darkness settle around you like soft linen. And as sleep begins to gather at the edges of your thoughts, the Nile murmurs its final lullaby, an old, unbroken melody carried by water older than history. It whispers secrets through the dusk, reminding you that even a god king must surrender to the gentle embrace of dreams. And in that quiet surrender, the day dissolves into night, and you drift into a world where the weight of crowns becomes light as river mist.
The moment the Nile fades and the pyramids dissolve into darkness, the world shifts once again, carried by a cold, rising wind that sweeps across your senses like a whisper from the far edges of the earth. The warmth of Egypt is gone, replaced by a biting chill that pierces your skin and fills your lungs with the taste of snow. Now we sail north, the night seems to murmur, where ice grips the fjords, where you are no longer royalty, but a warrior facing the longest, darkest winter of your life. As your eyes open, you find yourself standing before a longhouse buried halfway in snow, its wooden beams groaning softly beneath the weight of the storm outside. The sky is an iron-gray ceiling pressing low against the world, and the wind screams across the plains like a restless spirit searching for a place to settle. You push open the heavy door and step inside. Instantly, the world transforms. Warmth rushes toward you in a wave, soft and golden, carrying the scent of pine resin, smoke, and damp wool. The longhouse is dim but alive, glowing with the orange pulse of the central hearth, where flames twist and curl like dancing serpents. Shadows of warriors stretch long across the walls, made uneven by the flickering firelight. You remove your snow-caked cloak and hang it beside the others, each one thick, heavy, and marked by journeys through unforgiving winter. The interior of the longhouse is crowded, yet comfortingly intimate. Wooden beams arch overhead like the ribs of a great beast, sheltering everyone within. Furs cover the benches, dried herbs hang from rafters, carved shields rest against the walls, each one painted with symbols of storms, wolves, or the old gods. You sit by the fire, letting its warmth soak into your chilled hands. Around you, warriors tell stories in low, rumbling voices, the kind that warm the mind as much as the body. An old man with a braided beard recounts the tale of Ragnarok, the final battle of gods and giants, speaking slowly so the younger listeners can savor each word. His voice rises and falls like the tide, deep and comforting, as sparks jump upward from the fire with every mention of flames swallowing the world. Children listen wide-eyed, warriors nod solemnly. Even the storm outside seems to hush for a moment, as if it too wishes to hear how the world might end. You listen as the old man describes wolves devouring the sun, the sky splitting open, and heroes rising from the halls of the brave to fight one last time beneath a crimson sky. Yet despite the darkness of the tale, the warmth of the room softens its edges. It feels less like a prophecy and more like a reminder that even in the harshest winters, stories are fire, keeping everyone alive. The wind howls again, rattling the walls with icy fingers, but from within the longhouse, the sound is distant, softened, almost gentle. The fire pops, releasing a crackling burst of sparks that briefly illuminate the faces around you. Tired faces, strong faces, faces hardened not by war alone, but by the relentless winters that forge Viking souls long before battle ever does. Someone passes you a horn of warm mead, and the sweetness melts across your tongue, easing the tightness in your chest left by the cold. With each sip, the storm outside feels farther away, and the longhouse becomes a world unto itself, a refuge carved not from luxury, but from resilience. A woman tending a pot of stew murmurs a lullaby under her breath, one meant to calm children during storms, and the melody curls into the air like smoke from a quiet fire. The old storyteller's voice lowers, drifting into a softer tale now, one about hope after destruction, new green sprouting from scorched earth, the return of light after the endless winter. You lean back against the wooden post behind you, listening to the blend of crackling fire, murmured stories, clinking wooden bowls, and the distant storm. For a moment, you feel held by the warmth, by the voices, by the quiet strength of people who have survived winters far worse than this one. And as the snow thickens outside and darkness deepens across the northern sky, the longhouse glows brighter, becoming not just shelter, but the heartbeat of a world that endures through cold, through storms, through the long, patient passage of winter. By the time the longhouse settles into quiet murmurs and the fire burns down to a gentle glow, the storm outside has softened just enough for the hunters to move. Someone taps your shoulder, handing you a pair of fur-lined boots, still warm from the hearth, and without a word, you rise, feeling the shift in the room as a few seasoned warriors prepare to accompany you. Stepping outside, the cold hits like a wave, sharp, embracing, but not hostile, more like a trial the land imposes on those who dare to walk its frozen paths. The world is washed in stark whites and deep blues, the snow stretching in every direction like a vast, untouched canvas. The air is so still it seems to hum, and each exhalation escapes your lips in a plume of silver mist. You follow the hunters into the dense forest beyond the village, the sound of snow crunching underfoot, rhythmic and strangely soothing. Frosted branches droop under the weight of winter, forming archways overhead that transform the forest into a cathedral sculpted by cold and silence.
The lead hunter raises a hand, and everyone halts. Ahead, faint tracks dent the snow, delicate but purposeful, the marks of reindeer traveling toward the deeper woods in search of lichens hidden beneath the icy crust. Your breath slows, your senses sharpen, and for a moment the world narrows to nothing but snow, breath, and the faint whisper of wind threading through bare branches. Moving quietly, you follow the tracks deeper, weaving between ancient pines whose trunks rise like pillars of a forgotten temple. The forest is alive in its own quiet way, the soft creak of trees shifting, the distant caw of a raven, the muffled thud of snow dropping from a high branch. Then, a shape appears between the trees, a reindeer, tall and graceful, its antlers branching like winter lightning frozen in air. It grazes slowly, scraping the snow with gentle persistence, unaware of your presence. The hunters gesture for you to take the lead. Your heartbeat deepens, but not with fear, with a reverent calm. Hunting here is not conquest, not domination. It is survival woven with respect, a dance between human endurance and nature's vast patience. You draw closer, mindful of every step, but before you can raise your spear, the forest shifts. A heavy, low growl ripples through the air. The reindeer jerks its head up, ears twitching, and in the next instant it bolts into the shadows. Silence follows, sharp and sudden. Then you see it, a massive brown bear, ribs visible beneath its winter-thinned fur, eyes sunken yet burning with hunger. It emerges from behind a fallen log, snow scattering from its paws with each step. The world holds its breath. The hunters steady themselves, hands on spears, but none make the first move. They know winter bears are desperate, unpredictable, and the first mistake belongs to the impatient. The bear's gaze locks onto you. For a heartbeat, you feel the full weight of the season, the scarcity, the cold, the fragile balance of survival. But slowly, almost painfully, the bear lowers its head, grabs a scrap of frozen bark with its teeth, and shuffles away, beaten more by hunger than by your presence. It disappears into the dense dark, leaving behind only the deep prints of its passing. The hunters exhale softly. The forest releases the tension it held. You continue the pursuit, moving deeper until the tracks reappear, this time fresher, sharper. At last, near a cluster of wind-twisted pines, you and the hunters spot another reindeer. The throw is smooth, respectful, efficient. Survival, not triumph. As the hunters prepare the animal for the journey back, you look upward. Snowflakes drift lazily through the air, catching the pale light in small flickers of silver. The forest seems to breathe around you, a slow, ancient rhythm that welcomes those who endure and remembers those who fall. The return journey is quieter. The world feels softer now, less like a battlefield and more like a patient teacher. You walk through the snow, listening to the rhythmic crunch beneath your feet, the sigh of wind moving through high branches, in the quiet confidence of those walking beside you. And somewhere deep within, the cold no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a story you are slowly learning to read.
By the time you and the hunters return to the village, the sky has shifted into a deep, muted blue, the kind of color that lies between daylight and night, as though the world itself cannot decide whether to rest or endure. Warm breath rises from the longhouse chimneys, curling into the cold air like gentle spirits guiding your steps home. Inside, the stew has thickened, the hearth burns brighter, and the scent of herbs clings to the wooden beams. But there is no time to settle yet.
because winter is not merely survived in the north, it is prepared for, anticipated, wrestled into submission through quiet, steady determination. A few moments later, you stand again on the snowy shoreline where the longship rests, half buried beneath drifts of white. Even dormant, the ship looks alive, its carved dragon head rising boldly despite the frost clinging to its jaw. Torches flicker around it as warriors gather with tools, ropes, and planks, their breath drifting upward in silver clouds. You join them, placing your hands on the cold wood of the hull. It feels solid, patient, as though it remembers every storm it ever cut through. Working side by side with the others, you begin scraping ice from the planks, patching cracks swollen by the freeze, and tightening the lashings that bind the ribs of the ship. The work is slow but soothing. Each movement warms your fingers, each sound of wood accepting repair echoes like a promise that spring will return. Snowflakes drift gently, disappearing against your skin like small, silent blessings. As you labor, stories ripple through the air, soft laughter, memories of voyages past, tales of distant coasts touched by the longship before winter closed the seas. Someone recalls the first time they crossed the northern winds. Another describes the feeling of seeing unfamiliar stars above foreign waters. These stories do not boast, they steady the spirit, reminding everyone that beyond the long winter lies movement, horizon, discovery. Later, when the repairs pause, training begins in the clearing behind the longhouse. Torches cast warm circles on the snow, and wooden shields thud rhythmically as warriors practice stances passed down for generations. You lift your own shield, feeling its weight settle against your arm, not as a burden, but as something familiar, like the heartbeat of the land itself. The air fills with the sound of controlled breaths, soft footsteps, and the muted crack of wooden practice blades meeting shields. Nothing in the training is hurried. It is not battle, not chaos. It is preparation, a meditative conversation between the body and the cold. You spar slowly with an older warrior whose movements are economical, unhurried, yet powerful in their simplicity. He corrects your stance with a gentle touch, offering wisdom not through words, but through the calm precision of his actions. When you finally lower your shield, the sky above has shifted again. The first streaks of green shimmer faintly in the distance, curling through the sky like the breath of some ancient spirit awakening. The aurora grows brighter, unfurling in ribbons of jade, violet, and pale gold. The entire village steps out to watch. Even the longhouse seems to quiet itself as the lights ripple overhead. You tilt your head back, feeling the snow settle softly on your lashes as the night sky paints itself anew. The cold no longer bites, it nearly reminds you that you are alive, present, part of the same endless cycle that has shaped every warrior before you. You breathe in deeply, and the air tastes of pine, smoke, and the quiet promise of spring. And as the aurora dances above you, swirling like a dream given form, your thoughts begin to drift, loosening the weight of the day. You close your eyes, and the world softens into a cradle of frost and color. The last thing you feel is the gentle hum of the earth beneath your boots, steady and ancient, guiding you toward rest. And as sleep draws close, wrapping itself around you like a warm pelt, you dream of green shores, distant oceans, and the slow, steady return of spring.
From the frozen silence of the northern fjords, the world warms and stretches once more, reshaping itself into the soft gold of sunrise over vast imperial walls. The cold breath of winter fades into the gentle hum of a city stirring awake, and as your eyes open,
You stand at the eastern gate of Chang'an, the beating heart of the Han Empire, a place where every street feels like the beginning of a legend. The air is cool with early morning mist, carrying traces of incense, rice steam, and distant bells chiming from temple towers. Merchants are already gathering, their carts creaking softly as they load bolts of silk dyed in crimson and jade, jars of tea leaves fragrant enough to stir the air, and carved lacquer boxes meant for faraway courts. From frozen north to burning desert, the morning seems to whisper, you now walk the Silk Road as a merchant, carrying treasures between empires. You tighten the straps of your travel cloak, feeling the weight of the journey ahead settle onto your shoulders, not heavy like armor, but steady like responsibility. Around you, the caravan prepares in a slow, rhythmic dance, camels groaning as they rise from their knees, their long necks swaying like boats on a gentle tide, handlers murmuring to them in soft syllables worn smooth by years of travel, guards checking the edges of their spears and adjusting their lamellar armor. Every movement feels both ordinary and sacred, a ritual repeated by countless travelers who once stood exactly where you stand now. Before departure, you return home one last time. Your family waits in the courtyard, bathed in the pale glow of dawn. Your mother's hands are warm as she straightens your collar, smoothing the fabric as though it were the last thread tying you to the safety of home. Your father places a hand on your shoulder, firm, silent, carrying a trust he does not need to speak aloud. A younger sibling presses a small charm into your palm, carved from peachwood and shaped like a tiny lotus. For protection, they say softly, though their eyes reveal their fear of the long months ahead. You promise to return with wealth that will raise your family's status, with stories carved from foreign sands, with proof that the world beyond the empire's borders is not something to fear, but something to learn. And yet, beneath those promises, you feel something more fragile, the realization that every traveler leaving Chang'an has whispered the same vows, but not all of them returned. When you step outside again, the city has fully awakened. Chang'an is a world unto itself, grand avenues lined with mulberry trees, scholars hurrying toward academies with scroll cases on their backs, soldiers marching in perfect formation as their armor flashes like scales in the sun, and common folk shouting morning greetings across busy streets. But beyond all this noise and color lies the gate, the Western Gate, the threshold between the familiar and the infinite. When you approach it, the caravan master lifts a hand, signaling that it is time. Camels are lined in a long, swaying row, their saddlebags bulging with silk, porcelain wrapped in straw, medicinal herbs, and precious inks destined for lands where no one has ever seen such colors before. As you mount your camel, the city behind you seems to shimmer in the morning light, its rooftops glittering like scales of a slumbering dragon. A horn sounds, slow, low, ancient. The kind of sound that doesn't just mark time, it moves it. The caravan begins to walk. The road stretches ahead, long and shimmering, not yet desert, not yet danger, but an invitation. With every step, Chang'an grows smaller behind you until it becomes only a memory, warm, fragile, tucked somewhere deep in your chest. You look forward, toward mountains, toward sand, toward a world woven from trade, secrets, and stardust. And as the dust lifts gently around the feet of your camel, you realize the truth that every Silk Road traveler learns early. You are no longer just leaving home. You are becoming part of a river of journeys flowing between empires.
By the time the caravan leaves the last traces of Chang'an behind, the world begins to widen into pale sand and distant mountains, the colors shifting from the greens of river valleys into the muted golds and ochres of a land caught between silence and eternity. The air grows drier day by day, pulling moisture from your skin, thinning your breath, and teaching you the quiet patience of those who cross the Silk Road not by choice, but by calling. When the Taklamakan finally rises before you, a vast, wavering ocean of dunes, the caravan instinctively slows, as if acknowledging the presence of something ancient and powerful. "He who enters shall not return," a guard murmurs, quoting an old saying, though his tone carries respect rather than fear. You lift your gaze toward the horizon, where heat shimmers in long, trembling lines, making the dunes appear alive, shifting, breathing. The wind brushes your cheeks with warm, grainy fingers, leaving a thin film of sand that glitters against your skin. The camels groan softly as the caravan descends into the first valley of dunes, their wide, padded feet sinking gently into the powdery earth. By midday, the sun grows merciless. Its light presses down like a physical weight, flattening shadows until they cling tightly beneath your camel and disappear the moment you dismount. Sweat dries before it can fall, leaving salt on your lips. Each inhalation feels like drawing fire into your lungs, yet there is a strange peace to it, the kind of peace found only in places where life survives through stubbornness and grace. As the hours stretch, the emptiness begins to change. It is no longer silent. The sand hums beneath the wind, its grains sliding over one another like a million tiny bells whispering in unison. You begin to notice shapes, dunes curling like the backs of sleeping dragons, ridges sharp as blades carved by forgotten storms. At dusk, you finally cross paths with another caravan, Persian merchants in indigo robes riding tall, pale camels adorned with turquoise beads. Their leader raises a hand in greeting, his dark beard catching the fading gold of the sun. "Peace upon your journey," he calls, his accent melodic even in the heavy air. When your caravans stop for the night, you share a small camp between the dunes, lighting a fire shielded by stones. Around it, languages mix like spices: Chinese, Persian, Sogdian, the occasional line of Sanskrit, spoken between sips of warm tea that tastes faintly of cardamom. One Persian merchant unwraps a cloth pouch to reveal lapis lazuli stones, each one deep blue like midnight water. In exchange, a trader from your caravan shows him silk embroidered with silver cranes, the fabric so light it floats with the movement of your breath. For a moment you feel the Silk Road's heartbeat, not in wealth, not in distance, but in the way stories travel between strangers, sharing tea under the same indifferent stars. But the brief is peace. Near midnight, the dunes begin to tremble, and a dry, rising hiss spreads through the air. The caravan master's face tightens. "Sandstorm," he whispers. The wind arrives like a beast unleashed, tearing across the desert in violent bursts. You wrap cloth across your mouth and nose as the sky disappears, replaced by a swirling brown wall that roars against your ears. The camels drop to their knees, groaning, their handlers pressing close to shield them with their bodies. Sand scours your skin, biting like 1,000 tiny needles. You drop low, heart pounding as the world shrinks to a blur of wind, sand, and the frantic beat of your own pulse. Minutes stretch, bending into something that feels like hours. You can taste grit between your teeth, your eyes sting. The storm howls, and for the first time on this journey, the desert feels alive in a way that does not welcome you, but tests you. Then, as suddenly as it came,
The wind falls still. The sand settles in soft sighs, blanketing the ground in fresh curves. You rise slowly, brushing grains from your eyelashes, inhaling air that tastes blessedly cool. Around you, the caravan emerges one shape at a time, coughing, shaking sand from robes, checking the camels for injuries. The stars reappear, first a handful, then a sky full of shimmering needles. And in that immense quiet, you realize the desert has not tried to destroy you. It has simply reminded you, no one crosses Taklamakan untouched. And those who continue are never the same as when they entered.
By the time the dunes soften into low, rolling hills, your body feels carved from dust and quiet endurance, shaped by the unspoken pact between traveler and desert. The caravan moves slower now, the camels' steps heavier but steady, their silhouettes stretching long against the early evening light. And then, almost as if conjured by longing, color returns to the world, a ribbon of green unfurling across the horizon, palm trees rising like gentle promises, the faint glitter of water catching the sinking sun. Dunhuang, the caravan master says, voice warm with relief, the oasis of stories. As you approach, the air grows cooler, sweeter, as though it has passed through fields instead of dunes. The scent of reeds and distant cooking fires drifts toward you, pulling you out of the desert's embrace and into something softer, more human. The entrance to the oasis is alive with motion. Traders unloading crates stamped with Persian markings, monks in saffron robes tending to travelers, children rushing between stalls filled with figs, ink brushes, wooden charms, and silk dyed in colors too vivid to survive the desert. Your knees almost tremble with gratitude when you dismount. Water is brought in clay bowls, cool enough to sting your parched throat in the most comforting way. When you press your hands into the basin to wash your face, the sensation nearly brings tears. Water pooling, rippling, flowing, something you had not realized was so precious until the desert taught you its absence. The oasis glows under lantern light as night settles. The caravan sets up camp near Crescent Lake, its still waters mirroring the moon like a silver eye half open, watching centuries of travelers pass. You sit on a woven mat while food is shared, flatbread warmed by coals, dried apricots softened in warm tea, thin slices of lamb seasoned with cumin. Each bite lifts the exhaustion from your bones. Around you, stories begin to weave their familiar magic. A Buddhist monk tells of hidden caves filled with scrolls that record every prayer whispered on this road. A Sogdian musician plays a two-stringed lute, its notes drifting through the oasis like wandering fireflies. A Persian storyteller leans forward, eyes gleaming, whispering about caravans swallowed whole by the Taklamakan's fury and cities buried beneath dunes that shift like living beasts. But tonight, these tales feel less like warnings and more like threads binding strangers together. The Silk Road is not merely a route, it is a breathing tapestry stitched from voices, hopes, and the delicate courage of those who dare cross entire worlds for a single chance at fortune or belonging. When your turn comes to speak, you share something simple, not a tale of danger or treasure, but the quiet moment when you saw the stars reappear after the sandstorm. The circle falls silent for a breath. Then someone nods, soft and understanding. The desert tested you, a monk says. It does that to those it chooses. Later, as the fire crackles low, you rise and walk toward the edge of the oasis. Dunhuang's walls rise behind you, carved with symbols and murals painted by hands long gone. Ahead, Crescent Lake curves like a sleeping dragon's eye, and the dunes surround everything with gentle, protective arms.
The sky stretches endlessly above, deep blue, star-soaked, full of quiet promises. You breathe, and for the first time in many days, the air does not scrape your lungs. It fills them, softly, completely. And as sleep begins to tug at your senses, you realize a small truth. The desert took something from you, yes, but Dunhuang gives something back. Strength, stillness, the feeling that you are part of a lineage of travelers who faced the same winds, drank from the same oasis, and whispered their dreams to the same eternal sky.
The soothing breath of the jungle is different at dawn, as though every leaf and stone exhales together in one slow, ancient rhythm. And you, standing at the foot of the Great Pyramid, feel that breath pass gently across your skin. A soft mist clings to the steps rising before you, each one cut by hands that lived and died centuries before you were born, each stone holding stories whispered into it by countless priests who once stood where you now stand. As the first glow of morning touches the edges of the canopy, you begin your ascent. The air hums with natural music, the distant call of a macaw, the rustle of a small creature weaving its way through the underbrush, the soft hiss of dew gathering at the tips of broad green leaves. The stone beneath your bare feet is cool, carrying the memory of night, and with every step upward, the world seems to fall away behind you. You climb not just a pyramid, but a ladder into time, into sky, into the quiet presence of the gods your people have served since the first fire was lit in the first village ever carved from jungle earth. By the time you reach the summit, the horizon has begun to shimmer with a pink-gold radiance, and the air feels thinner, brighter, touched by something sacred. The jungle stretches in every direction like a living ocean, rippling with shadows and hints of color as the sun prepares to rise. You kneel at the eastern ledge, your palms resting on the carved altar where generations of priests observed the heavens. Before you lies the sacred sky, and at this hour, one star shines more brightly than all others: Venus, the morning star, the celestial guide your ancestors trusted to mark endings, beginnings, and the turning of the great cycles of time. The codices taught you that Venus controls the balance between war and peace, between famine and abundance, and that a single misreading of its path could shape the destiny of thousands. The responsibility settles gently upon you, not as a weight, but as a cloak placed on your shoulders by those who came before you. As the star shifts position across the brightening sky, you begin your calculations. You trace invisible arcs with your fingers, whispering numbers shaped like wind against stone. You recall each lesson taught to you in the quiet hours of night: how to measure the days, how to divide the sacred cycles, how to listen to the stars not with ears, but with patience. When the first sliver of sunlight breaks the horizon, you feel it touch your face like a warm hand. The sky turns from soft rose to living gold, washing over the treetops, awakening birds, revealing the vast sprawl of temples, plazas, and stone roads hidden beneath the canopy. Below you, the city slowly stirs, families lighting hearth fires, farmers preparing their fields, artisans shaping obsidian blades or carving glyphs into fresh limestone. But up here, above the waking world, time feels slower, more elastic. You are alone with the stars and the first breath of day. You lift a small offering of maize flour, letting it fall gently from your palm, carried away by the wind to the gods who watch from beyond the sky. You murmur a prayer of gratitude for the return of the sun, for the guidance of Venus, for the chance to serve your people in the way all Mayan priests were called to serve, not through domination, but through understanding. And as the light continues to rise, you sense something quiet and steady forming within you, a deepening of the inner stillness your teachers always said was the true mark of a priest,
Not knowledge, not authority, but calm. The kind of calm that allows the stars to speak to you without being drowned by fear or desire. Standing at the top of the pyramid, surrounded by the awakening jungle, you feel the presence of the gods not as distant figures, but as breath, warmth, and light. And for a moment, you understand why your ancestors built their temples so high, not to reach the gods, but to listen to the world from above the noise.
The sun has fully risen by the time you descend the pyramid steps, its warm light soaking into the stone and the forest canopy, turning the world into a living tapestry of green and gold. You walk through narrow stone corridors carved between temples until you reach a wooden door wrapped in age, its surface etched with glyphs that curve and spiral like quiet thoughts. This is the library of codices, the heart of knowledge preserved through centuries of observation, ritual, and cosmic listening. As you push the door open, the scent of bark paper and dried pigments greets you, ancient yet comforting, like stepping into a memory you never personally lived but somehow recognize. Inside, the chamber is cool, dimly lit by shafts of sun filtering through small openings high in the walls. Dust particles drift in the beams like tiny stars, turning the air into a slow-moving galaxy. Shelves of cedar wood line the walls, each one holding folded codices, long strips of softened bark, pressed, smoothed, painted, and protected for generations. You approach them with reverence. These are not merely books, they are living timelines, delicate bridges connecting your heartbeat to those of priests who came before you. The first codex you unfold crackles softly as though waking from sleep. Its pages reveal rows of elegant glyphs, snakes curling into symbols of rebirth, jaguars representing the night sun, spirals mapping the cycles of Venus, and stepped motifs echoing the very pyramids your people built to speak to the heavens. You trace a glyph with gentle fingers, feeling the slightly raised texture of pigment. Every stroke carries intention, a story, a memory. Your teacher once told you that codices are the breath of your civilization. They contain everything that truly matters. The mathematics that measure the sky, the genealogies of kings, the omens recorded during eclipses, the weaving patterns symbolizing the underworld, and the sacred calculations that govern festivals and the turning of the long count calendar. As you study, the chamber grows quieter still, as though the world is leaning in to listen. You begin to transcribe new observations from your dawn ritual. The brush glides across fresh bark fiber with a soft whisper, dipping into black ink made from soot and sacred plant resin. You record Venus's position, noting how its slight shift signals the beginning of a minor cycle. Every number, every curve matters. Your people's sense of time is not a straight road, but a woven net, circular and eternal, and you are one of the weavers. Hours pass in a gentle flow, but here, time does not feel like something lost. It feels like something being shaped, molded, expanded. You pause to examine one of the oldest codices, kept inside a stone box for protection. Its pages are darker, the pigments deeper, richer, created by hands older than any living elder. This codex speaks of a great drought centuries ago, and how the priests of that era traced its pattern through the stars and predicted the rain's return. It speaks of a solar eclipse that frightened the people, and how a single priest calmed an entire city by explaining that the sky was only resting its light. It speaks of ancestors who walked these same rooms, lit the same lamps, and whispered their calculations to the night. You must not read only with your eyes, your teacher's voice echoes in your memory. You must read with patience, with humility,
with the understanding that every glyph survives because someone believed the knowledge was worthy of eternity. As you breathe deeply, the cool air settles into your lungs like a slow blessing, and for a moment, you feel the presence of time not as a ticking force, but as a warm river moving around you. You write another line in your new codex, your handwriting small but steady, and realize that someday, long after your bones return to the earth and the jungle grows over these walls, someone else will touch this page. Someone will trace your lines the way you traced the ones before you. And in that moment, you understand the quiet truth of your role. You are not just preserving knowledge, you are becoming part of time itself, a silent architect of memory, a keeper of the universe's breath.
By the time you step out of the library of codices, the sun has shifted toward its slow descent, painting the edges of the temples in warm amber. The air feels different now, alive with a hum that seems to come from the very stones beneath your feet. Today is no ordinary day. It is the day of preparation for the festival of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, whose presence weaves through the sky, the rains, the harvests, and the secret corridors of time. As you walk toward the central plaza, you hear the first low beats of the drums, deep, steady, resonant like the heartbeat of the jungle itself. The sound vibrates through your chest, grounding you in a moment that feels both ancient and present. Priests, artisans, and villagers are already gathering, moving in graceful patterns as though guided by a choreography written long before any of them were born. Feathers dyed in emerald and crimson are sorted carefully into baskets. Incense made from copal resin burns in steady curls of white smoke. Young apprentices carry carved masks depicting serpents, birds, and celestial beings. You breathe in the scent of copal. It is sweet, sharp, almost metallic, and feel it settle into your thoughts like a gentle clearing of the mind. This scent has filled ceremonies for centuries, carrying prayers upward on invisible currents of air. You move toward the temple steps, where elder priests instruct younger ones in arranging offerings: cacao beans, maize kernels, jade fragments, obsidian blades, and woven cloth swirled with patterns meant to honor Kukulkan's descent from the heavens. Even the air feels charged, as though waiting for something sacred to unfold. Your role today is both humble and essential. You are to assist in the alignment ritual, the careful preparation of the stairs, where at sunset, Kukulkan's shadow will appear to slither down the pyramid as light and geometry merge into a single moment of cosmic precision. The elders explain each step slowly, their voices soft but firm, how the torches must be placed so the flames echo the shape of a serpent's spine, how the stones must be brushed clean so the play of light will fall sharp and unbroken, how silence must be kept during the final moments before sunset so the world itself can inhale with you. You kneel, brushing the steps with woven palm leaves, feeling the texture of every stone. Each groove holds echoes of countless festivals before this one: footsteps, chants, laughter, and tears. You sense the weight of time and the dust you push aside. As you work, more drums join the rhythm, accompanied by the eerie, mournful notes of wooden flutes. The music floats across the plaza, through the canopy, through the temples, like breath from another realm. The villagers begin to gather in the square, taking their places slowly, almost ceremonially. Children sit on their parents' laps, eyes wide with anticipation.
Elders lean on carved staffs, their faces illuminated by knowledge passed through generations. Artisans stand proudly near their creations, waiting to see how the god will judge their work. The sun draws lower, casting long shadows across the plaza. You place the final torch in its carved stone holder, and the flame flickers once, as though awakening. The elders nod. The preparations are complete. The world grows quieter, not silent, but hushed, expectant. The drums soften into a slow, steady pulse. The flutes draw out their notes like threads of wind. Then, as the sun touches the horizon, the miracle begins. Light hits the pyramid's corner at a perfect angle, and the first triangular shadow appears on the steps. Another follows, then another, and suddenly the serpent moves. A rippling chain of darkness descends the pyramid, perfectly aligned, perfectly alive, a creature carved from sunlight and geometry. Gasps rise from the crowd. A child whispers a prayer. The drums still. You watch, breath caught in your chest, feeling the presence of Kukulkan not as myth or metaphor, but as a force woven into the bones of the earth itself. When the final shadow reaches the ground, the world exhales. The music returns, now softer, like a lullaby offered to the gods. You stand among your people, heart beating in the same rhythm as the drums, knowing that this festival, this moment, binds you to everyone who has ever looked to the sky and waited for the serpent to descend.
Soothing sleep narrator. Before dawn has even begun to think of rising, a whisper of cold air moves through the training camp, brushing across your skin like a reminder that discipline always wakes before sunlight. You open your eyes slowly, muscles protesting the motion, each fiber carrying the echo of yesterday's drills, long-distance runs, repeated sprints, wrestling bouts that left your arms trembling, and weight training that pushed the limits of what your young body thought it could endure. The straw mat beneath you crackles as you shift, and for a moment you lie still, listening to the soft world around you. The rhythmic breathing of other trainees still half asleep, the quiet hoot of an owl fading with the night, the distant clatter of a trainer preparing the track for the day's first exercises. Your body aches in a dozen places, a deep, honest ache earned through months of relentless training. It is not pain that weakens, it is pain that tells you you are becoming something new. You sit up, stretch your sore arms overhead, and feel the stiffness release in tiny crackling threads along your spine. An oil bearer approaches with a small clay jar, offering warm olive oil infused with herbs. You pour some into your palms, and the familiar scent rises, sharp, earthy, comforting. As you massage the oil into your shoulders, thighs, and arms, your skin shivers at the warmth. Then comes the strigil, a curved bronze blade used not for injury, but for renewal. You drag it across your skin, scraping away sweat, dust, and the remnants of yesterday's exhaustion. The rhythmic scrape is almost meditative, a cleansing ritual older than the Olympics themselves. Outside, the gymnasium begins to wake. You hear the first heavy footfalls of runners hitting the sand track, their steps soft but determined. Trainers shout instructions in the dawn haze, their voices carrying authority without cruelty. Longer strides, head up, again. The sky is still a deep blue, the last stars fading slowly as your heartbeat settles into the rhythm of morning. When you step outside, the cool air greets you fully, and the world smells faintly of pine, warmed earth, and the smoke of early cooking fires rising from distant tents. The stadium's curved stone walls loom against the horizon, ancient and steady,
as if waiting to see whether you are worthy of joining the memories carved into their history. Your trainer, a stern but fair man from Ellis, hands you a wooden cup of diluted wine. "For strength," he says, though you both know the real strength lies not in the drink, but in the consistency of your discipline. He studies you with a sharp eye, noting your posture, the slight swelling in your forearm, the tired set of your shoulders, but he says nothing. He's seen these signs in every young athlete before their first Olympic appearance. "Pain now is victory later," he finally murmurs. Nearby, a group of younger athletes gathers around an older wrestler telling a story, one you've heard many times, yet never grows old. Milo of Croton, the boy who lifted a newborn calf every day until, as years passed, the calf became a fully grown bull and Milo could lift it still. Some laugh, some shake their heads in disbelief, but deep inside, each of you holds on to the tale because it feels like a promise written for anyone brave enough to step into the arena. You look down at your hands, calloused, bruised, stronger than they were 10 months ago. The transformation has come slowly, whispered into existence by dawn after dawn like this one. The sky lightens, a sliver of gold spreads across the horizon, and as the first true light touches your face, you realize something quietly profound. Today's pain is not a punishment, it is a companion, a guide, a sign that you are walking the same path walked by heroes whose names still echo across centuries. And when your trainer calls your name, you step forward, not as a boy, but as someone being shaped by fire, sweat, and the slow alchemy of the gymnasium.
The morning's calm dissolves the moment you step onto the training field. For here, the air carries a different weight, one shaped by grit, heat, and the unspoken hunger of every athlete who has ever dreamed of wearing the sacred olive crown. The sand track stretches before you, smooth yet unforgiving, its surface warmed by the early sun. You press your foot into it to test its softness, and the grains shift beneath your weight, reminding you that running here is not like running on flat stone. Here, the sand humbles the legs, forcing your strength inward, demanding that every step be chosen rather than thrown. Your trainer signals, raising 2 fingers, a silent count. The others line up beside you, each one breathing in sync with the rising tension that always precedes the stallion race, the sprint that crowns only the fastest, the most composed, the one who can silence fear long enough to let instinct speak. When his fingers drop, the world explodes into motion. Your feet strike the sand, not gracefully, but forcefully, kicking grains behind you in tiny golden sprays. The ground feels alive under your soles, resisting and yielding all at once, pulling at your momentum as though testing how badly you want to win. Your heart pounds a staccato rhythm, each beat pushing you forward, each breath a fire drawn into your chest. The other racers blur in your peripheral vision, and for one brief moment you are not in training. You are in Olympia itself, standing before thousands, the roar of the stadium filling every corner of the world. But then the burn arrives, hot, sharp, spreading through your calves and thighs like molten metal. You drive your arms harder, lift your knees higher, and embrace the ache as part of the ritual. When you cross the imaginary finish line scratched into the sand, you bend forward, hands on your thighs, panting like a soldier returning from battle. The trainer offers no praise, no comfort, only a nod, the kind that says, yes, again. Later, the discipline of sprinting gives way to the controlled silence of the discos field. A bronze disc, smooth yet heavy, is placed in your palm. Its weight surprises you every time, dense and patient, like something forged not merely to be thrown, but to be understood. You roll it across your fingers, feeling its coolness,
then its warmth as your body heat seeps into its metal. Around you, the wind shifts gently, brushing your shoulders and whispering through the columns of the training ground. You take your stance, grounding your feet into the earth. Turning your body requires precision, the twist of the torso, the alignment of breath with motion, the moment of balance before release. When you rotate, the world seems to spin with you. The disc leaves your hand in a single fluid moment, slicing through the air like a small planet freed from its orbit. You watch it land, kicking up a puff of dust. Not perfect, not terrible, merely honest. Your trainer steps behind you, adjusting your shoulder with a firm hand, correcting your stance with a gentle push. Feel the earth first, then the sky. His words settle into you like a seed waiting for rain. The transition to wrestling, pale, is abrupt, jarring, as though the body shifts from poetry to battle in a single heartbeat. The wrestling pit is nothing more than a circle of pressed sand, yet it feels sacred, an arena for truth stripped of all ceremony. Your opponent today is slightly heavier, shoulders broad, eyes sharp with focus. When you meet him in the center, the ground is warm beneath your feet. There is no countdown, no signal. You simply collide, hands locking, muscles straining, breath mingling with his as your feet slide for leverage. The struggle is raw. Sand grips your skin, clinging to sweat. The world shrinks to the pressure around your ribs, the burning in your arms, the weight of your opponent pushing you toward the earth. You twist, pivot, attempt to break his hold. He counters. He tries to throw you. You anchor your legs, feel the pulse of the earth beneath your toes, and push back with everything the gymnasium has carved into you. The match continues until your body trembles, until winning feels as distant as the sea. And yet, somewhere deep inside, you refuse to yield. When you finally manage to send him to the ground for the third and final time, you collapse to your knees, chest heaving, vision trembling at the edges. The trainer's voice cuts through the haze. "Fear is louder than failure," he says. "Learn to quiet it." You sit there, trembling, letting the truth of his words sink into the bruises forming on your arms. Around you, the wind whistles gently through the stone columns. The applause of a few onlookers echoes softly, and in the distance, you think, just for a moment, you can hear the roar of a stadium that does not yet know your name. So late afternoon, the sun has softened, turning the edges of the training ground gold as dust drifts lazily through the air. Your body is heavy, every muscle swollen with effort, every breath deeper than the one before it. But the day is not over. The gymnasium has a final lesson for you, one that does not belong to the body, but to the mind. A quiet call echoes across the courtyard, guiding the athletes into a shaded portico lined with marble columns. There, seated upon a simple stone bench, is the philosopher, a thin man with silver strands woven through his dark hair, his eyes soft but sharp in a way that seems to see through exhaustion and ambition alike. When he speaks, his voice is calm, gentle, almost like the hush of wind sliding past a mountain. He speaks of kalos kagathos, the ideal of being both beautiful and good, of cultivating a strength that radiates outward from an inner clarity rather than from brute force. He reminds you that winning crowns is useless if the soul underneath is brittle. Around you, the other young men listen, chests still rising from the effort of training, hands still trembling faintly from fatigue. But something in his words settles the body, smoothing the raw edges of the day. You feel your breath shift, widening, softening, acknowledging that your strength is not solely in the power of your legs or the precision of your throws, but in the quiet discipline that holds you steady when the world roars. When the philosopher dismisses the group, you move with the others toward the thermae, the baths that wait like sanctuaries at the end of a long journey. The moment you enter, the air transforms. Warmth envelops your skin first, then your lungs, then your thoughts. Voices echo softly across the chamber, but none of them sharp, none of them demanding. You begin in the frigidarium, where the cold water bites into you. Every nerve in your body wakes at once, a shock that pulls the breath from your chest. But as you remain still, letting the chill settle into your bones, you feel something else rising beneath it, a sense of alertness, of clarity returning after the chaos of the day. When you step into the tepidarium, the transition feels like stepping into a memory of comfort. The water is warm, embracing, gentle enough to release the stubborn tension in your shoulders. Your muscles begin to loosen, no longer clinging to the rigid discipline of the training ground. The light in the chamber is soft, filtered through steam that moves like pale ghosts drifting freely. You close your eyes for a long moment, and the silence feels like a balm. But it is in the caldarium, the hot chamber, that the day finally cracks open. Heat wraps around you like the breath of the earth, heavy and humid, whispering against your skin. Sweat rises quickly, merging with the steam until the boundary between your body and the air around you disappears. You sit among other athletes, each one lost in their own thoughts, their own quiet battle between fear and hope. Somewhere near you, two young men from Corinth discuss the last games, speaking of a runner who collapsed just steps before the finish line. A Spartan boasts of a teammate who has apparently broken a training record that morning, his voice edged with pride, yet tinged with warning, the kind that reminds you the competition is real and it is near. You listen not with dread, but with an odd sense of belonging, as though the stories being told are threads of a tapestry you have now stepped fully into. You lean back against the stone wall, feeling the heat pool around your spine. The philosopher's words drift through your mind again, not just strength, but goodness, not just victory, but clarity. As the steam swirls around you, forming soft white veils that catch the lamplight, you allow yourself to imagine the stadium tomorrow. Not the roar of the crowd or the pressure of the race, but the moment before the starting signal, the moment of stillness where the world narrows to breath, heartbeat, and purpose so simple it feels like truth. When you finally rise from the caldarium, your body feels renewed, washed clean of fear and fatigue alike. The night air outside is cool, brushing gently against your damp skin, as though welcoming you back to the world with a softness the day had not allowed. You realize, quietly and without ceremony, that you are no longer afraid of tomorrow. You are simply moving towards it, one steady breath at a time.
Night has settled gently over Olympia, the last strands of twilight fading behind the distant hills as torches flicker to light along the sacred precinct. Their flames dance softly in the evening breeze, casting long, wavering shadows across the stone pathways. Your body is still warm from the baths, but the air around you feels cool, almost reverent, as though the entire sanctuary is holding its breath in anticipation of what is to come. You walk slowly with the other athletes, feet brushing against the ancient dust that countless champions have walked before you. The silence is thick, yet comforting, broken only by the rhythmic hush of sandals and the occasional whisper of torchlight bending in the wind. And then, rising ahead like a golden apparition, the temple of Zeus comes into view.
Even from a distance, the structure commands awe, towering columns reaching into the darkening sky, a roof carved with scenes of heroes and gods, and within it all, the colossal statue of Zeus that watches over the games with eyes carved from ivory and gold. As you step inside, the scent of burning incense curls through the air, wrapping around you like a delicate veil. The chamber is vast, filled with shadows that sway gently as the torches shift. And there at the center stands Zeus himself, 13 meters tall, gleaming beneath the warm glow of lamplight. His presence feels both protective and overwhelming, a reminder that these games are not merely contests of strength, but sacred offerings to the divine. The other athletes form a circle around the altar. You join them, feeling your heart slow into a steady, deliberate rhythm. An elder priest steps forward, his robes trailing behind him like flowing parchment, his voice low and steady as he recites the ancient oath. It is a vow older than memory, older than the stones beneath your feet, a promise of discipline, fairness, and unwavering commitment to the craft you have trained for across 10 long months. When your turn arrives, you place your hand upon the cold stone, its surface smooth yet impossibly firm, and you repeat the words with a quiet sincerity that surprises even you. You feel the weight of them settle into you like a new heartbeat. For a moment, the world narrows to your voice, the torchlight, and the silent witness of Zeus towering above you. The fear you carried in the morning is gone. What remains is something calmer, deeper, an acceptance that tomorrow is no longer a challenge to fear, but a destiny you have earned the right to meet. As the ceremony ends, you lift your gaze toward the massive figure of Zeus. Candlelight ripples across the statue's golden armor, flowing over every fold and every curve, illuminating the god's serene expression. His eyes seem to look past the centuries, past your small frame, and into the quiet place where your hopes live. When you step outside, the night sky greets you with a mosaic of stars, brilliant and unshaken, as though placed there for this night alone. The cool air brushes your skin, carrying faint echoes from the practice fields and distant murmurs of athletes preparing for sleep. You find a quiet corner near the training quarters, a simple room with a thin oil lamp glowing beside your bed. When you lie down, the straw-stuffed mattress crackles softly under your weight. The blankets are coarse but warm, and the air smells faintly of olive oil, smoke, and stone warmed during the day. As you close your eyes, the events of the day drift back through your mind, not as burdens, but as gentle reminders of how far you have come. You think of the sand beneath your feet during the stadium sprint, the weight of the bronze disc warming in your hand, the raw struggle of wrestling, the words of the philosopher settling into your chest, the heat of the caldarium loosening your doubts, and the towering golden figure of Zeus watching in silence as you sealed your vow. Outside, the night wind sighs against the stone columns. Crickets begin their quiet chorus. Somewhere in the distance, a lone torch crackles softly, sending tiny embers drifting upward like hopeful sparks searching for constellations to join. Your breath slows. The weight in your limbs becomes gentle, grounding, and in the space between waking and sleep, you imagine tomorrow, not with fear, but with a quiet, steady light. It feels as though the very stars are waiting with you. Tonight, a whisper seems to murmur from the world outside, you rest as a human. Tomorrow, you rise as an athlete of Olympia. And with that final thought, soft, warm, and full of promise, you drift slowly and peacefully into sleep.